Questions are central to the learning process that students engage with inside and outside of the school context. It forms the basis of everyday inquiry, so it becomes a natural correlation that how teachers frame questions and the type of questions they use is pivotal to students' lifelong learning. This is one thing that my placement-based inquiry revealed. My focus: how to better use higher order questioning. 3 areas of research formed the basis of my investigation: Bloom's revised taxonomy, Moodley's research into higher questions for higher order thinking, and Ybarra and Hollingworth's opus on explicit direct instruction and the key to higher order questioning in crafting flexible learners. Bloom's taxonomy has been a long-standing classification on the cognitive learning process. It clearly outlines the progression from the domain of lower order thinking to the metacognitive tiers in higher order thinking. Students engage in the lower levels of the taxonomy and gradually build upon these until they can use lower order processes to independently engage in higher order tasks. It acts as the research foundations for my inquiry. Extending on this, Moodley highlighted the importance of using carefully scaffolded questions in the classroom each and every day. In a very practical spin, she links this to success dependency in Western education on assessment. Finally, the core of my research and inquiry is taken from Ybarra and Hollingworth's work on explicit direct instruction. Commonly mistaken for direct instruction, EDI focuses on the importance of student understanding in differing contexts by the consistent reorganisation of information through a range of higher order questions. This is what I focused on during my placement teaching Year 11 legal studies. During my block, learning centred on the relationship between the rights of the individuals and the collective rights of society. In particular, we investigated the implied right to the freedom of speech in Australia and whether or not there should be restrictions on this right in order to uphold the collective safety of society. This topic naturally lent itself to higher order questions. Following the EDI model recommended by Ybarra and Hollingsworth under the company DataWorks, I first taught the content and then checked for student understanding through lower order questions using instructional verbs such as describe, list, and state. For example, the final lesson of my placement with the Year 11 legal classes was a structured debate. Focusing on the Thomas Kelly Coward Punch case and the involvement of the media in influencing public opinion and law reform, students participated in a 4 corners activity. I posed the statement to the class: the media should have greater freedoms in Australia. Students then moved to 4 corners in the room: strongly agree, disagree, or strongly disagree. Once students had moved to a position, I then asked them to justify their positions. Some found this easier than others. However, what I noticed was that students did not provide as thorough a justification when simply asked to explain their position in comparison to the discussion that followed between the students on their own. This falls under what DataWorks' higher order questioning frame analysis of point of view. Typical to a debate style, this type of questioning requires students to consider and question other people's perspective/opinion. Once students began to question each other's positions, they had to explain their position with greater detail and evaluation of the content. The second thing that became evident from my inquiry is that students are more eager to engage in learning in a meaningful way when it is clearly linked to real-world concepts. This allows students to more readily develop and have opinions on the topic, which in turn allowed them to engage in the higher order questions more meaningfully. This also allows students to develop a deeper understanding of the content. This is something that was discussed in my QT rounds with my professional learning community. Learning about the deep understanding criteria and dimension of the quality teaching framework, it was clear that this sort of topic and the use of higher order questions was aiding deeper understanding at the level required for a Year 11 legal studies class.